Fallout Equestria. Heroes. By No One. Chapter 7. Made Mare. A gentleman always has a flower handy to drop on an opponent's grave. I smashed his head against the table. Blood seeped from just above his forehead and pooled on the surface of the table before I pulled him back up. He was tougher than most. The last two brought into the room had taken one look at me and squealed like a stuck mole rat. The buck glared at me with his deep red eyes and didn't say a word. "Just tell us who you're working with." The large red pony that recruited me into his gang 4 days earlier smiled at the other end of the table. He'd do that for the stubborn ones. Smile and let me do the hitting. I think he liked the room more than was healthy. "And you get to go." "Fuck you!" My hoof struck into his stomach. Gasping, he held himself, and his head slumped back into a pool of blood. "You," he gurgled. Almost sounded like he was drowning. I rolled my eyes and looked away from the sire sight. Doing shit like this made my stomach turn. At least it had the first time. Now I didn't really care. "Listen, my friend here," he waved a hoof at me before flicking his pitch-black mane out of his eyes, "likes to hurt ponies. Not much for words, but the hurting part she gets, see? This ain't no game." I stood as still as a stone as the green stallion we were interrogating rose his head from the table and spat a gob of blood in front of the red pony. "Fuck you! I'm an NCA soldier and a citizen of Flank Yard. You have an idea who you're fucking with?" "Do you?" The large red pony could not hold back his glee as a smile formed on his face. "The NCA is toothless. They exist because Daesh hasn't told them to fuck off yet. Do you have any idea how many NCA fools are buried in unmarked graves? And yet the Mustangs survive." He laughed heartily enough to send visible shivers down the green stallion's spine. "Show our guests what we think of the NCA." I clenched my teeth on his mane and threw him from his chair, sending him sliding into the white wall. Quickly I spit out the hair still stuck in my mouth, bits of flesh clinging to their ends. I resisted the urge to scrape my tongue with a hoof. The bits of hair I couldn't spit out were itchy and annoying, but my boss hated it when I broke my character. Finally, I turned back to the pathetic green pony, now bleeding heavily from the back of his head, the blood starting to dye his mane red. "Will you speak now?" The green stallion rose his head and looked up at me with glassy, fear-filled eyes. I met them with my usual stony look, and he shuddered. "Hey, you bastard! You and your fucking augmented psycho cyborg freak!" How charming. I made sure to remember that in case he survived the encounter. "Fine, fuck it. Fuck them. I'll tell you. Just tell your dog to heel." Now it was an augmented psycho cyborg dog. He really should keep his story straight. Respectfully, I backed up to my master's side as the green pony spilled the beans. Apparently him and 4 other ponies had taken from the university. I don't quite know what a university is, but it seemed to be key. In Flank Yard, and had developed a strategy to beat blackjack, just by counting cards and some fancy mathematics. It was a good plan, a solid plan, until they got caught. And when you got caught cheating in dice, or when some pony thinks you're cheating, you're usually never seen again. Frankly, the whole idea was crazy. The house always wins. "These are the names and profiles of the group," Red Pony was saying to one of the guards of the room. "Send them to every casino in Dice. Might as well tell those fuckers at the death clock about them, too." He turned and grinned at me. "And the house says we never do nothing good." "You don't," I helpfully pointed out. "We don't." He placed a hoof on my shoulder. "You're a Mustang. Might as well be proud of it." I shrugged him off. "You're an ass, Mayhem." "You could at least pretend to enjoy your work." "No, I couldn't," I said flatly. With a deep-chested sigh, Mayhem led me down the white hallway. It was a simple hallway that seemed almost too long and too bright, with only 2 doors on either end. This was intentional. Some ponies have been known to break down halfway through the hallway and confess their crimes before even reaching the room. It was designed to intimidate, and it did its job well. It was their own fault, though. Trying to cheat the house was a good way to get a bullet in the brain. "You're more fun when you're drunk," Mayhem said, leading me into the roomy cargo elevator. "Fuck off," I said. Just thinking about that night made my head pound, and it didn't help that Serenity and Flair thought it funny to bring up at every possible opportunity. If that damnable blue Pegasus was to be believed, I'd hired a private dancer just to make her hoof wrestle me. I bought rounds of drinks and dash for every pony in the casino, stole a pit boss's gun and accidentally shot a hooker in the flank with it, and got on stage and danced. I didn't believe half of it, but my hazy memory of the night didn't give me a good standing to argue. Mayhem chuckled as the door slid shut. "You've got the next few hours off. I'm the boss wants you at the door to send away the street rats," he said as the elevator started to jerk upwards. How I hated elevators. They always seemed to make my stomach turn. At least the ones in the moon did. I had never been in an elevator before, and I had originally thought them magic. Mayhem said something about weights and counterweights, but I was still fairly sure it was magic. "Aunt Serenity?" I asked. "I guess your whelp can have some time off," he shrugged. "Call her that again," I said as the machine jerked to a stop. "I'll kill you." "I only do it because I know it brings a smile to your face." The door swung open and I briskly stepped out and quickly slammed it on his smarmy face. The front of the door was adorned with a symbol of a pony in a wheelchair, with a sign claiming it was out of order. Sign, I walked past the bathrooms and down to the small hall into the casino floor. The floor was just as dazzling as it had been the first time I saw it, only now the large fake moon looked less sparkling and more chipped and cracked. The games on the floor with their bright lights now made me feel guilty instead of excited. And the dancer on the stage seemed a lot less sexy now that I knew her name was Mayflower and was only working there to pay for her dash habit. I blamed Flair, that ass. "Hey, baby," the skimpy mare sauntered up to me. "Do you want to—" "Oh, it's you." Her voice dropped suddenly from its sultry tone. "Done with that NCA nerd already?" She flipped her hair and grinned. "Hard to believe the gall of some of them folk. Not hard to believe you'd make 'em crack, though." "Thanks," I mumbled as my eyes searching through the casino floor. Reluctantly, I had gotten Mayhem to agree to let Serenity work, but only after Serenity had forced me to agree to let Mayhem let her work. Or something. I didn't want her anywhere near a place like this, and for good reason. But she was nothing if not stubborn. "Have you seen—" "High rollers, Blackjack," the mayor said at once, smiling at me. "So you got some time off? Why not get a drink with me? I'm a lot more interesting than a filly." Sighing, I turned my head to the sweet girl, knowing she was just looking to make extra money. "No," I said. I trotted my way into the den that was the casino floor. Somehow it seemed they made the rows of slot machines and tables confusing on purpose. Had I not been forced to walk around glaring at ponies every day, it would have taken me forever to find the high rollers table, even considering it was on an elevated platform. I was nearly stopped on the stairs until the guard recognized my metal leg and let me through. Serenity was easy to find after that. She was cheerfully lifting up a drink from the tray balanced on her back and placing it telekinetically in front of a rather serious-looking player. Like everything else, she was determined to do her job with a smile. I trotted up just to hear an old mustachioed stallion say, "Hey, pretty filly." He stroked back his sweat-soaked gray mane. "How much for a night?" That was not going to happen. "She's not for sale," I said. Both filly and old man turned to look at me. Serenity squealed in delight and quickly hopped onto my back, the tray in her back clanging to the floor. The old stallion just laughed at me. "Listen, this is the moon. Everything's for sale, even you if I wanted." He slammed his hoof on the table for effect, doing little more than drawing attention to us. "Great, just what I needed." "Hand her over. Do you know who I am?" I said no. I repeated, edging ever closer to the old stallion. More ponies turned and watched, but no pony said a word. I could taste the tension in the air, and the slight glow on his horn made my shoulder burn. "Get out of my way, you little pigeon." With less than a gentle shove, I sent his head into the blackjack table. At the impact, his head snapped back, sending him sprawling off his chair onto his rump, blood dripping down around his horn. "Oh, what?" I moved over his limp body, eyes burning red hot. "I said she is not for sale." I pressed my metal leg against his shoulder, pinning him to the ground. "Got it?" He nodded dumbly, so I took the time to turn away, wondering what could make Pona so stupid. Quickly, I left the scene, hoping that Mayhem wasn't going to add more caps to my already expensive debt. But, damn it, some ponies need to be taught manners. The crowd that had formed had already dispersed, I saw as I looked back, and every pony went back to gambling. It wasn't that unusual on the moon. Rude customers get a smack to smarten them up. Cheating customers got dragged to the room, and good customers got taken to the back for a private dance. Most were willing to risk the bad for that chance, so every pony won. Except for me, because I wanted nothing to do with it. You didn't have to hit him, Serenity sighed, placing her forehooves on top of my head, messing up my already messy mane. You're right, I said. She peered over my head, looking at me upside down with stern gray eyes. So, why did you? He pissed me off, I said. Sighing, she returned to curling up on my back, pouting no doubt. I weaved my way back through the half-filled maze of slots into the bar. The bartender recognized me right away and magically held up a bottle of apple whiskey and waved it in my general direction. Groaning, I waved it away with my metal hoof. You're an ass, I said. I thought you liked whiskey, he said. Oh, how I loved whiskey, and how I hated it. 2 sparkle colas, I said. I sighed, resting my head on the counter as the bartender chuckled. 2? You must be real thirsty, he said, just as Serenity popped up my back and rested her forelegs on my head. Again. Oh, hey there, Serenity. Forgot how to walk again? She giggled and floated one of the sparkle coals over in a pink glow. My shoulder burned slightly, but honestly, ever since entering Dais, it had been burning non-stop. You couldn't go 3 steps without running into a unicorn. Luckily, it seemed the more magic around, the duller the burning would get. Really, you'd think it'd be the opposite. What did I know? I gulped back the carroty soda in a single gulp, letting the bottle drop to the counter with a ting. Honestly, I wished it was whiskey, but Serenity would have given me one of her looks. Somehow she had a way of making me feel guilty over the most absurd things, like beating up perverted, creepy old men. Maybe it wasn't so bad. Helped wean me off the stupid choices I was wanting to make. Get up, Hard. Groaning, I lifted my head and turned to see Mayhem leaning on a nearby railing with his legs crossed casually. Boss wants to see you. Boss. He was the boss. He told all the pit bosses what to do and only answered to Roy Mustang and... Oh, serious? Roy wanted to see me? There had to be some mistake. That must be some mistake, I remarked, turning smoothly to the red stallion. I said the same thing, believe me. Boss usually don't like any pony, and lately he ain't seen no pony but me and his mares. Note the plural. The only thing I knew about him came from the radio, and none of it was good. Apparently he was involved with a raid on the local power station. Don't ask me what fueled the station. I hadn't a clue. Magic, I guessed. And later joined forces with the Minotaurs, who were an equally nasty piece of work. He was also my boss, so I was obliged to abide by his whims. Right, so I don't get a break? I asked. I met his unflinching red gaze for a second before he laughed. No, clean yourself up first and wash your tail. My tail was fine. I switched it back and forth to prove that point. When was the last time you brushed it? Never. That was a dumb question. Sometimes I brush it when she sleeps. I glared at Serenity as she giggled on my back, suspecting she wasn't joking at all. She opened her mouth as if to continue her joke when some pony down in the bar cut her off. Turn it up! I turned to see a shocked little gray mare staring at the radio playing Mr. New Hagis's show. Unsurprising, as it was the only show. What was surprising was that Mr. New Hagis didn't seem his usual self.
You heard that right, every pony. Yesterday, a day will live in infamy. The NCA South Canyon base was suddenly and deliberately attacked. It's too soon to say conclusively, but it appears the Minotaurs had a balefire bomb planted in the catacombs beneath the base.
He paused, as if not actually believing it.
It's unknown how many survived the attack, but what is known at this time is that without a doubt, we are seeing the start of another bloody chapter in pony history. May Celestia and Luna above guide us.
What the? My mind was swimming. A balefire explosion. War. But what I thought most about was the Minotaurs and their connection to the Mustangs. And to me, now, it seemed, without my knowledge or consent, I had declared war on the NCA. The only thing I could think of was a single word. Survive. Ow! I winced, kicking my back leg involuntarily. Gentle? Wimp, not my fault your tail is so tangled. I turned to glare at Serenity as she gleefully brushed my tail silky smooth. She was clearly enjoying herself way too much, but it was too much of a hassle to do it myself. It's not my fault Celestia made me an earth pony. It made things difficult. Nothing I couldn't handle, at least when I had friends. Dear Celestia, I'd officially become a cliche. This reminds me. I turned my head to the window of our small, dirty hotel room we called home to see Flair float through the open window and landing with a flourish. That night, you hired a bartender and we got his brush. Flair, Phil is a present. Serenity just raised an eyebrow at me and giggled before running over to embrace the blue Pegasus. Rolling my eyes, I took a seat on the floor. Did you need something? I asked. Flair didn't choose to answer my question. At least not before picking the small unicorn up and doing a quick backflip, much to her delight. News of a sort. Figure I still owed you. Damn straight. It's serious, though, he said, taking the time to ruffle up Serenity's mane. Very serious. Like grade A Celestia tier, serious fucking business, so prepare yourself. The attack on the NCA base. Oh, you ruin everything. Flair harumphed, floating himself up so he could cross his forelegs at me. Couldn't even let me have this one little thing. Just once, you know. Got a whole big dramatic thing planned and you go and ruin it by already knowing it. Now I need to think of something else exciting. Oh, I got it. I'm on the edge with excitement, I intoned dully as I inspected the wallpaper. Once it had been white with murals of Celestia and the ministry mares on it. From my understanding, Dice was made for equestrians looking to take a break from, war, but had since yellowed and decayed, even stripping off parts so I could see the rotting wood behind it. Some pony in this room might just get reaccepted into the Enclave. Well, the remnants. Honestly, the whole war thing going on in the north, you'd think they'd change their name to something less something. Way I hear it, they're sending raptors against any pony that used to be Enclave. And that puts a big old target sign on us, but Celestia's nephew, he just didn't shut up. What did I do to deserve this? I thought you quit, I said. I did. Well, I was forced to quit after this one time I blew up one of our basements due to the fact I may have been in an altered reality. But I still quit, you see. He made this explanation while flapping his wings to allow him to simulate landing on the ceiling. Talking to Flair made me dizzy. Not for a month, though. Maybe less if the war turns out in force. But they want to make sure I'm clean before taking me back. Explosions and drugs don't mix, they say. His grin told me he thought differently. Oh, you can stay with us, Serenity chirped in, until you can join again. Hired's nice, but she never tells me stories like you do. Fillies are a fickle bunch. Also prone to putting me in awkward situations with annoying Pegasi. Well, at least he did have some advantages, his storytelling notwithstanding. Yeah, sure, a real power trio, I said and waved a hoof dismissively before stretching and returning to all fours. Come on, Serenity, the boss is expecting me. Mayhem can wait. He's all bark and no bite, Flair said, prompting me to give him a sly smile as Serenity hopped onto my back. Opting to be mysterious instead of helpful, I walked out the door and shut it behind me, hoping to leave Flair bewildered, if for no other reason than because I found it funny. That's a valid reason, right? The hallway out of the 6th floor room was very bland. Maybe to contrast the excitement of the casino floor, I wasn't sure. The wallpaper was plain white, or it was white but had since turned yellow, with a bar horizontally across the center with pictures of the different phases of the moon. A lovely aesthetic. At least I thought it was, and Serenity seemed to busy herself as she walked down the long hallway by counting the phases, so it was a win-win. Blah, blah, blah. We walked and walked, rode an elevator, made some small talk. Honestly, my mind was in a whole different place. For some reason, my mind was flashing back to that contract Lucky gave me back in Timber after I kicked his ass out of town. I was doing mental juggling trying to justify shirking the Mustangs if the war got started in earnest, on the off chance that the NCAed decided the Mustangs were too cozy with the Minotaurs. I tried to slam my head against the elevator door just as it slid open. I hit the ground head first with a thud, sent a dull pain through my skull, neck, and my pride as Serenity giggled at me. What are you doing? I looked up and saw Mayhem's red eyes glaring down at me like I was an idiot. Groaning, I jumped to my feet and shook the pain out of my head. Resting, I said. Blinking for a second, he turned away. Why the boss wants you, I'll never know. This way, up the stairs. Huh. I looked around at the similar-looking hallway. Aren't we on the top floor? Mayhem obviously thought this was a stupid question and just kept walking, so I had no choice but to follow him. The room he led us to was of just a bit remarkable in that upon opening the door, the only thing in it was a large spiral staircase with gold railing. His penthouse apartment is up these stairs. He said he needed to speak to you alone. Mayhem sounded a bit insulted, so that made it all the sweeter. When we reached the top, I was a bit dumbstruck at the sheer extravagance. The entire top floor was set up so you could see clear from one side to the other with nearly every other wall covered in windows, which I made sure to avoid, for lack of wanting to get into highly detailed metaphors describing the intricacies of the room that won't even come into effect. I'll give you a short rundown of the amenities in descending order of me giving a fuck. A large ballroom, complete with crystal chandelier, a huge outdoor deck and patio with a large pool, a gilded telescope, a huge heart-shaped bed sectioned off into the corner, an entire wall of swanky-looking paintings, some sort of gold tub thingy. Whoever built this place really liked gold. And a small, relatively speaking, as the place was fucking huge, hastily constructed wooden room with the words Boss's Office painted on the front. Hazarding a guess, I walked up to the set of red carpeted stairs and gently tried to knock on the door, only for it to swing wide open. Fuck took you so long? The pony was not what I was expecting. A small, lithe, royal blue unicorn was sitting on a cushion across from the door, smirking with strangely white teeth. His black hair was cropped short, yet still managed to spike awkwardly, and his tail wasn't visible underneath the huge white fur coat he wore. You fuckers know who I am, so when I come calling, you get your rotten tail up here, capiche? I nodded dumbly as he waved a hoof over to the cushion across from him. As I went to slide down, Serenity hopped gingerly off my back. The fuck is that? Did Mayhem not give you the scoop? I said alone. Last time I checked, Phil his opponents too. Sighing, he levitated a bottle of apple whiskey over to himself, drinking straight from the bottle. Whatever. She can stay as long as she learns real quick how to shut the fuck up. My shoulder burned, and I so much wanted to relieve that burn by shoving it into this pony's smarmy face. Introduction time. Go. Hired gun, I said. He rolled his eyes at my name, even though he already knew it. Serenity. Whatever. It doesn't matter who you are. Only you work for me, Roy Mustang. Got it? And before you go asking any stupid fucking questions like what kind of pony name is Roy, my mother called me Rolo, but I stopped going by that after I stopped being fat. Got it? Any questions? Good. Now, I've got some problems. You're retarded, I can see, so I won't hurt your tiny head. Suffice to say, I need you for a job. What's the... I started to say before he cut me off. I'm getting to that part. Patience. Fuck it. Like talking to a foal. Serenity giggled at that until I shot her a look and wrapped my foreleg around her, drawing her close. You've heard of the bases, right? Vaguely, I said. Of course. Only two things you gotta know. First, they run the ale house. And two, they want to take over my assets. He groaned and rose to his hooves, seemingly only to stare out the window at the dark alley mysteriously. I think we're weak, and that we'll bow down and capitulate. Capitulate what? Surrender, that is. Well, we won't. Are you? I said with a sigh, laying down and resting my chin on my metal leg. He turned his head and raised an eyebrow, somehow not comprehending what I thought was obvious. Are you weak? I asked. He said more in a defensive glare than he ever could have said with words. No. Weaker perhaps, but the Mustangs are not weak. The raid on the power plant was folly, only because it failed. I got the feeling he was trying to convince himself more than me. But we will not fall. Not to Molly. Molly? Lay her to the bases. You really don't know fucking shit, do you? He turned back and took a seat, and didn't stop glaring at me until I stopped laying on the floor. Spoiled sport. She's a fucking liar and a cunt. He sounded more like a spurned lover than a gang leader. And she wants my casino and my water. Why her? I asked. Because Mr. House don't give a shit about any pony. Ain't good for no pony, but ain't bad neither. I attacked him directly, and his only response was to sneer and ignore me. The Galatians ain't much better. I've heard rumors of some pony trying to usurp me, and she's the only pony that can, or would bother to. Now stop asking so many fucking questions and listen like a good little filly. Urged to stomp and do a pace rising. Now here's what I need from you, so listen good. He slicked back his pitch-black mane with a sly grin. I need you to break into that cunt's casino and get me the juice on whatever she's planning. He rolled his eyes. And before you ask any dumb shit question, I need those fucking plans to plan my counterattack. And if it comes down to it, get the Galicians to assist. The Mustangs ain't without friends, you hear? He shook his hoof almost menacingly at me. What do I get? I asked. The privilege of working for the fucking boss. He rolled his eyes and casually strolled over to a small cabinet and levitated a large wooden box out before dropping it on the floor in front of me. You'll get out of your debt by the end of the week. A job here if you want it, and this motherfucker. He levitated the lid off with an orange glow, revealing the inside. I licked my lips at the sight. That was a damn fine gun. A battle saddle mounted .50 caliber semi-automatic anti-materiel rifle with what looked like a custom oversized magazine and auto ammo changing attachment, all in a sleek dark gray skin. I cannot express in words how much I love that gun, which is a shame considering the format you're getting this information in. But if I could, I most certainly use the adjectives sexy, amazing, unfucking believable, wing boner inducing. Of course, there were so many problems with this request. The most important being, how the fuck was I, the monster mare from beyond the stars, with the subtlety of a jackhammer, supposed to sneak into the head office of one of the most important ponies in Dais? I say this now, but at the time it wasn't really that important because, goddamn, that gun. It was what every gun should aspire to be. I'll do it, I said. Good, he smiled. Now get the fuck out and tell Mayhem to bring me the girls. Need to relieve stress. That's a terrible plan. Less than 2 hours after meeting with the rather incorrigible boss of the Mustangs, me, Serenity, and Flair were sitting on my raggedy bed. I mean, shit, just a terrible plan. By the way Flair was flapping his wings, I guess he did not care for my plan. As he raged on, I took the time to help with the slowly peeling away wallpaper by poking at it. How do you plan to sneak through the walls of the fucking alehouse? Even if I could fly you on top. Which, by the way, I can't. I ain't Batmare. He groaned, accidentally smacking my hoof with his wing. Even if I could, I wouldn't. You may be obliged to make an enemy out of the bases, but I am not so dense. You will. My lavender eyes shot up meeting his stern glare. He started to talk, but I had about enough of that, because you owe me. For what? He started, but I cut him off. How much? He raised an eyebrow as he slowly floated back to the floor. Those drug dealers, how much did you owe? I was taking a gamble, but a casino seemed to be the appropriate place for that. Fuck. He stomped his hoof ineffectively at the floor. Okay, so maybe I lied. Maybe they weren't selling drugs cheap. They just were pushing me for money. Okay, I saw the fucking opportunity and He lowered his eyes, looking almost ashamed. I took it. How the fuck did you know? That ain't the thing that spreads around. I saw him eyeing the open window, and just as he did, a pink glow slammed it shut. Smiling, I gave Serenity a nod of approval. I didn't, until now. As I gave him time to pick his jaw up off the floor, I quietly congratulated what had to have been my most clever moment in a long time. Now you owe me. You owe Serenity. Almost killed her, so you owe. And if I refuse, what? You'll kill me? Is that it? I know what I did was wrong, so you're preaching to the choir, he said, backing up towards the window nonetheless. I just wanted a new start, new life. I didn't think any pony was going to get hurt. I never wanted no pony hurt. You gotta believe me, He grit his teeth and tried his hardest to burn a hole in the carpet with his gaze. Fuck, all right, you win. Was there ever any doubt? He groaned and flopped onto the floor, which gave Serenity plenty of time to tackle him. The blow sent Flair stumbling to his side and Serenity into a giggling fit. Clearly she had already forgiven him. I couldn't help but smile as they wrestled on the floor, the epic battle of wills not ending until Flair had managed to deviously ensnare Serenity in one of his wings. The tickling of his feathers proved too much, and she was forced to surrender between fits of laughter. I was reluctant to stop them. We had work to do. I quickly grabbed the map Mayhem had given me after meeting with the boss and rolled it on the floor between us. It was a highly detailed, if criminal map of the top few floors of the alehouse's third building. To be honest, I wasn't sure which of these three buildings Miley's office would even be in to pilfer the information the boss needed. This one was my best guess, if only because it was a building that once held the casino's pre-war owner. All right, so how are we going to die? Flash said as Serenity scrambled out of the folds of his wing to look at the map too. That's why I pointed out an over-large vent that, for some explicable reason, connected the pre-war boss's office with the roof. Actually, it wasn't that inexplicable, and it was the first thing I noticed when looking at the map. Honestly, my best guess why that particular event was oddly placed and oversized was not that the former owner wanted to be spied on, but as an easy escape route. It was simple to deduce. What with war coming, an easy escape route to the stable must have been a priority. And Mayhem had told me all the hotels had secret escape routes. That could work. Well, if you were some other pony. Flair rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Also, I took offense to that. Don't take offense. I'm just saying, you're loud is all. And with that hoof of yours stomping all over the place in a metal vent, well, you ain't gonna be very subtle. Folk will either figure out it's a spy or think a sonic ring boom has invaded their hotel. Sonic what now? I raised an eyebrow, but gave up on asking. I figured it was a Pegasus thing. Well, I could try to... Do what? Something? Quiet like? What about, Flair furrowed his brow. This was a terrible plan. A really bad plan. Fuck. I can help. Those three little words nearly threw me off my hooves. Instead, I just sort of stared wide-eyed and bewildered at Serenity. How was she supposed to help? Unless she magically got a cutie mark and infiltration, I doubted she would be of much use. But I let her speak her piece, just in case I was wrong and or an idiot. Turns out both. How? I asked. I know this spell. She gulped a bit and her cheeks reddening as she stared up at the ceiling. Mr. Morrowind taught it to me. It's, well, I could turn sound off. Off? Like a switch or something? You remember the, tunnels? With the drug dealers and that awesome rocket launcher? Me and Flair just nodded dumbly. Well, I kind of used it there, 'cause rockets are loud when they explode, and I didn't want to hurt my ears. Should I have noticed that? I remembered something about her being there, but whatever. Serenity, it's dangerous. And stupid, I thought. It's okay, she bounded up to me. I won't ask for a gun or anything. I just want to help, 'cause I like to help, even if it is dangerous. I mean, everything's dangerous. I know you want to keep me safe, and I like being safe, but, I have to take risks sometimes or we'll never get to do anything. So come on, please. Pretty please. Those eyes. No pony should be that cute. Puppy eyes are officially cheating. Fine, I said. Odds are currently 9-1 that I regret my decision. Taking all bets. Serenity squeaked with delight and embraced me. From the burn in my shoulder, I guess she was magicking something. Just this once, I tried to say, except what came out was, nothing. My mouth moved, but no words came out, and Flair was laughing his flank off. Yeah, Serenity was just showing off now. Even still, I had to laugh, just a little bit, and only because no pony could hear me anyway. How much longer do we gotta wait? Serenity was driving me batty. All we had to do was sit on the bench watching the moon's water show and wait for Flair to arrive with what he needed for our mission. Instead, she got bored and now was running circles around the bench complaining. Until he gets here, I said. That's a stupid answer. She hopped her way onto the bench's backrest and bounced on two hooves. He's slow. You'd think a Pegasus would be faster, Not super slow. I'm bored. This should be exciting, not boring. Every pony I know talked too much. I didn't ask for this. Oh! My head snapped at the strange voice to see a frail old unicorn way too close to me. I may have jumped, just a little. I never seen so much gray on a pony before. His coat, his mane, his clothing, even his eyes were gray. Just looking at him made me feel old. What? I asked, with a glare, of course. Interesting choice. Yes, very interesting. I haven't seen a working Series 19B in dice in years. Yes, reliable, but so very old. So many more styles to choose from. Yes. Was he talking about my leg? Not even a hello first? How rude. Ma'am, you should think about upgrading. Yes. I would suggest perhaps a Cerberus model. Yes, it'd fit some pony of your stature. Retractable claws for gripping. Yes. And an optional shotgun. Oh, it works better with a full set. Yes. A quick My legs are fine. I shoved the old man away harshly with my perfectly fine cyber leg. Just because it was old and a bit skeletal looking didn't mean I needed a replacement. Cerberus models are dumb. Serenity said, resting her forelegs on my head with her hind legs on the bench backrest. I'll kick, but they all break down. Every pony knows that. You shouldn't try to rip ponies off. I looked around, and though ponies were numerous, many liked to stop and watch the water show. None were flared to save me from whatever was going on. Oh? The old stallion wrinkled his already considerably wrinkled snout. And what would be better, little Miss Know-It-All? I briefly weighed the morality of murdering obnoxious elders. The 1001, for starters. The old stallion rolled his eyes. It's a million times more reliable. What's good of having a shotgun strapped to your leg if you have to clean every shot? So what? Came the dreaded response. The 1001 is sturdy, but used for other than walking, not to mention heavy. Where have you been? The newest version is sleek, trim, and 20% lighter. House came out with it last week. Almost half his guards are wearing that version. Cerberus is a joke. Every pony knows that. At least every pony with a brain. Guess that don't mean you. For some reason, I felt this unnatural urge to chide Serenity for being rude, but I couldn't follow through, if only because I was far ruder far more often. What are we arguing about? Flare. Thanks, Celestia. It was Flare floating above us with a look of bemusement. Save me, I mouthed to Flare as the two continued to bicker about wires or something. He laughed and did a quick flip before landing in front of us. Look at the time. I quickly jumped to my hooves, pulling Serenity onto my back. Let's go. Before either of them could get off another word, I followed Flare. He fluttered off just ahead of us as he led us down a small alleyway beside the moon. I couldn't help but notice the difference between the outer facade of the moon and the dusty, dirty side walls that looked almost indistinguishable from the abandoned four-story building on the other side of the alley. How did you convince them? I asked, keeping my voice low. I was more than certain undesirable ponies hung out in the back alleys behind the Strip's casinos. I kept my eyes to the sky at the dark cloud layer burning red as the sun began to set. Flare landed in front of me before turning into a long, empty street. Once upon a time, I was sure it had been a busy pre-war street, but now it was trash. A backwater street in a city where only the Strip mattered. Some buildings had stood strong, while others had collapsed into heaps or fallen into the street, filling it with rubble. They said the ice had never been hit directly by a megaspell, but looking at the tumble-down back street, it was hard to believe. As pretty as the main street of this city was, this street looked no better than Parasite Mound. I asked nicely. Flare floated down to the street. Ain't the finishers just let you borrow it? Nope. He grinned, turning and leaning on the sky carriage. They let you borrow it. Heard from Screenshot. Photo feels real guilty for what happened to Serenity. Guilty? A week back for a gang leader if you ask me, but what other gang is like the finishers? They got a stick and they stick to it. He tapped the wall of the carriage with his hoof. So I ain't complaining. Well, I said, trotting over to the back of the carriage and helping Serenity inside. I'll have to thank them. Serenity looked around the cart nervously as I turned back to Flare. You can do this? Before he said he wouldn't be able to carry me in it. Or was it'd be too slow? Either way, wanted to make sure so as not to fall to our deaths. Yeah, no worries. I totally got this. He lowered his body as if ready to spring out at me. I'm good. You'll see. Smoothest ride you ever get. You can count on it. I'd rather not ride at all. Didn't plan to after this adventure. Not that I was afraid. No, sirree. I wasn't afraid of nothing. Even if I was afraid, which I wasn't, Flare pushed me in the cart before I had a chance to say anything, the black panel snapping up and locking to keep us from rolling off. With a jolt that shook me off my feet and nearly into Serenity, who of course giggled, we were off. I could already feel that sinking sensation and my stomach tying itself in knots. Turning to the open back of this transport, I saw the ground. I knew the plan was to fly high into the clouds so we could fly from west side to the main street where the moon was, to the east where the alehouse stood. But I was not prepared for the way the ground grew smaller and smaller and the buildings shrank beneath us. I tore my eyes away and covered them with my good foreleg, accidentally whacking myself with my pit buck. All that open space. How easy it'd be to just fall. I hated falling. I could feel Serenity nudging me with her nose. Quickly I moved my leg back to the floor and stared at the front wall of the cart. I couldn't bear to show weakness. Again. Damn it. Are you okay? She moved closer, trying to comfort me, I was sure. Instead, it was all I could do not to jolt away from her. You're not gonna fall, don't worry. Flare keep us safe. Hard? Sorry, I mumbled, not able to look in her eyes. Fuck heights. Are you afraid of heights? No, I was afraid of falling. No, I said. Just, I fell once, off a cliff, a long time ago. I didn't actually remember the fall, or the landing. Wildfire said I fell from my guard post back in Mare. Nearly died, I said. It was not a pleasant memory, for a lot of reasons. And whenever I look down, that's all I could think of. It's just seeing the ground like that, I said. In Mare, I'd gotten over my fear of that cliff, so as long as I never looked straight down, because that was there every day. This was different, though. Nothing between me and the sky but a thin sheet of wood, and Serenity was there in the cart with me. And she reminded me so much of that charcoal gray filly. Stupid, weak silver, get over it, survive. So I clicked on my radio instead. That helped me not to think about falling. It was hard with the way my stomach twisted as Flair turned, but the radio was depressing enough to counter it.
Reports are still coming in hot and sketchy about the bombing yesterday. So far, the NCA has reported less than 200 casualties, including 30 members of the Watchers, who had a medical camp set up in the base. However, we have reports from anonymous individuals who place the number at over 350. A huge blow to the NCA regardless of the actual figures. Well, that's depressing enough news. On to something heartwarming. It seems a raider gang that has been pestering caravans in the northeast has suddenly vanished. Multiple witnesses have reported the Mare Philly walking away from a known raider base shortly before the raider gang vanished. Keep up the good work, gals. On to the music. Now with 20% more repetitiveness.
I rested my head as a familiar Sweetie Belle song poured out of my pit buck, my mind going back to a raider I'd met weeks earlier. "We're here," Serenity said a little while later, her head peering out over the back panel. Reluctantly, and at Serenity's behest, I looked out, and down at the top of one of the alehouse's 3 buildings. Gulping, I quickly pulled my head back inside. Time to put my stupid plan to the test. "Wait here," I commanded Flair. We'd waited until it had become full dark before truly descending and landing on the roof. "Fine by me. Have fun storming the castle." I rolled my eyes as I helped Serenity down from the cart, my fake leg creaking noisily. I really hoped Serenity could do that spell. Flair just watched, leaning on the cart. "If any pony shows up, run." His smile said he'd already planned that. "Then come back later. We'll hide." After I got a nod, me and Serenity were off. The round roof had a series of vents sticking off the top, all around the relatively raised platform, with a huge letter V tattooed on it, we had landed on. The one we were looking for was kind of obvious, as it was the larger than the rest by miles. No pony could fit in a real air vent unless they were a foal, and maybe not even then. And when I kicked the metal door open, it had a sloping set of stairs. I guess my theory was right. Nodding, I let Serenity go first, and as my metal hoof hit the steps, there was not a sound to be heard. In addition, the light from Serenity's horn was more than bright enough to allow us to see. A vent being dark was not actually factored into my ingenious plan, as for some reason I expected a secret passageway to be perfectly lit. Though a more important question entered my mind. How is it possible a filly with such a magical ability didn't have her cutie mark yet? I was positive I was younger than Serenity when I got mine, and I still had no idea what mine meant. I crouched low as the stairs ended and nearly whacked my head off the ceiling. It seems even over large escape route vents still weren't made for a pony my size, and I had more important things to worry about than cutie marks. The vent twisted and turned as below me I could hear ponies idly chatting. Before you ask, I did not bother to remember what they said, as idle chatter is usually trivial and not important, but every time I heard them my heart jumped into my throat, not out of fear, but out of not wanting to fight my way out of that damn hotel without a single weapon on me, only a single-shot rifle on my battle saddle. Slowly we made our way through the vents, until it started to slope again, ending abruptly at a wall. Great. I suppose I could just kick the damn thing down. No one's worked for me before. I lifted my hoof. "We need a patsy then." A slick voice came from the other side of the wall, slightly muffled. Now, a surprisingly feminine voice answered. "Such an ugly term. All we need is a pony what knows how much a bottle cap is worth." "When Granny Dynamite finds out." "She won't. Don't worry your pretty head. Just get them ready. Poor Mustang won't know what hit him." Jackpot. Could I get any more lucky? Stumbling into information just like that, almost anticlimactically. I chuckled a bit at the thought. Chuckled. Wait, I could hear myself. Fuck. Looking down, I could see Serendity's horn had died down, and I could hear her panting for breath. Fuck, you idiot, idiot. I let her get tired. Overuse her magic, and there was a gunshot, and a hole appeared in the wall in front of me, embedding itself into the wall right beside my head.
"Oh, rat?"
the feminine voice said, laughing a bit.
"Sneaky Mustang rats never stop crawling around my hotel. And now they think I'm an idiot and don't know my own hotel secrets? Won't even need to call an exterminator for this one."
A second shot ricocheted, skidding my leg just above my pit buck and knocking me messily out of my stupor. "Fuck," I said, picking the filly up by the scruff of her neck. We bolted up the stairs, sort of. I had to crouch so I couldn't run, but I scooted as fast as I could for fucking sure. My leg clanged noisily. My position was giving away with every step as bullets flashed upward through the vent. I had to stop. I threw Serenity on my back and crouched down lower. I couldn't let my stupidity get her hurt again. A sharp pain suddenly exploded through my back hoof. Gritting my teeth, I charged onwards. The vent creaked under me as more bullets sprayed, my blood leaking through the holes. Most missed. Still, it was all I could do to keep from screaming. Little light, bullets everywhere, Serenity on my back. I yelped in pain as a bullet scraped my side. Another impacted my metal leg with a ting, and the whole structure creaked. I kept moving, though. Gotta keep moving. There was a snap, a creak. Suddenly I was falling, and the ground came up too quick. My chin cracked against the floor, and I could taste blood. Somewhere Serenity was groaning, and I heard shouts all around, but all I could see was darkness. I rose to my hooves. The remains of the vent tumbled off me. Looking up, I could see a hole in the ceiling, and the parts of the vent that didn't break away. My exit, now 10 feet away, and I couldn't jump that fucking high. "She's a big one." I looked down. The whole hotel seemed wobbly. Maybe I was dizzy. Head trauma's fun. But even with the wibbly-wobbly way of seeing things, I recognized the barrel of a gun. It was attached to a battle saddle that was attached to a dark green mare with a huge yellow mane of varying shades. On her flank, I could clearly see a cutie mark in the shape of a black cowpony hat. Click. So apparently long falls fuck up guns. Why do all my guns break? I took my mouth away from the bridle and lowered my body. Bullet holes or no, I was getting out of this hotel. "Oh, calm down," the mayor smiled seductively. "You can't escape. We found your friend 10 minutes ago." She motioned her head to the right where Flair was sitting at the end of the hall, tied up and smiling sheepishly. "Or did you really think you stumbled onto our secrets? Silly rat, that's not how you play this game." Celestia's cunt. This sucked. "Well," I slurred through my bloody tongue. "Owie!" Serenity popped her head out from the rubble of our escape plan. "Boy, did we escape?" "No, little one," the Green Earth pony said. "But if you're good, and if you tell me why my hotel's infested with rats," she smiled brightly, "then you just might. But if you lie to me, then Mommy and I are going to have a little chat. In private." I should have been worried about the impending torture and epic failing of my plan. Instead, the only thing I could think was, she's not my daughter. Level up. Skill note. Sneak. 40. Companion perk unlocked. Silent goings. With Serenity in your party, you have the option of removing all sound once a day for a 5-minute period. New perk. Acrophobia. You have a fear of heights, probably due to some traumatic incident in your past. You're not a wimp, but you suffer a -1 endurance and a -15 damage threshold when over 20 feet in the air, but gain +1 endurance and +15 damage threshold when you are on or under the ground. The sweet, sweet ground.